they remember your CV, but for those that have not been here, I would like to very briefly to read the following. Professor Nestorovic holds a PhD from the Institute of Political Science in Paris. He teaches geopolitics and international marketing at the ESSEC Business School for more than 20 years, with a specific focus on business and management. His research interests include the geopolitics of Asia, international marketing and commerce, and Islamic business and management. He regularly teaches in Paris, Mannheim, Tokyo, Seoul, Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, Bahrain, and Rabat for students or companies such as Takeda, Danone, Delphi, Thales, or Tijariwafa Bank. Professor Nestorovic is a regular guest on news and current affairs programs, providing expert commentary on geopolitical issues, especially on the relationship between the US and China. He appears on TV channels such as CNBC, CNA, and in newspapers such as Le Monde, Libération, La Tribune, The National from Abu Dhabi, Jakarta Post, Bangkok Post, the Business Times from Singapore, and The Edge in Singapore. The microphone.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you. And thank you very much for coming. We didn't plan to be in such interesting times, I would say sometimes catastrophic times, but this is what it is. So we cannot choose the time when we are coming here. I would like to thank also the excellencies who are sitting here and also the students. I see many students who are present here. I'm a professor, so I like when the students are in the room. So in that case, we can interact also with the students. I am coming here for the second time. So this time it is upon the invitation of another business school called IPADE, and it is my pleasure to be again in Mexico in order to talk about these issues which are present here, which are called geopolitics and business. Just yesterday, I had a very interesting conversation with the people from UPS. UPS is a big logistic company. It is an American company. And it was interesting to see how they prepare for the post-tariff war, which has been initiated as an American company working in Mexico. Because this will also have consequences on them too, not only on Mexican companies, but also many American companies are operating here in Mexico. So in order to start the discussion, I will first just indicate here what I'm doing. So I'm in the ESSEC Business School. ESSEC Business School is a French business school. In the French system, the business schools are separate from universities. So we are not part of the university. We are a standalone business school, but a very big standalone business school because we have about 7,500 full-time students, and we have about 6,000 executives that we train per year. And we have several campuses. So the two main campuses are in France, but we also have a campus in Singapore, and we have a campus in Rabat, in Morocco. So in Singapore, we exist for more than 20 years, and I am personally based on the campus in Singapore for the last 13 years. So it means that we have a good exposure to what is happening in Asia, especially what is happening in Southeast Asia, since we have been present there for quite a long time. So I have two domains. The first one is geopolitics, but today geopolitics is a buzzword, and everybody talks about geopolitics. But when I started to teach geopolitics in a business school, that was quite new, and many business people, they didn't want to talk about geopolitics because of the term politics, which is inside. And they are saying, no, no, this is not for us. We don't want to talk about politics. We are here only to make business. But very soon, geopolitics is coming to them, so they cannot avoid talking about that. And today, for the CEOs and for the people who are in the upper management echelon in a company, they must talk about geopolitics. Why so? In the past, it was easy for them. They are hiring some lobbyists who are doing the job for them. And the lobbyists are talking to the governments. So today, they have changed the name. They're not called lobbyists anymore. Now they're called public affairs. But it's the same thing. So they need to talk to the governments, so that's okay. So they are taking these people, and on the market, you can have many lobbyists. Sometimes they are coming from politics too. You can even have some former prime ministers who can become lobbyists. So this is not something which is new for them. So they are hiring people who will protect them, first thing. And they're very well paid, of course. The second point is that we have insurance companies. And the insurance companies, they are insuring the companies when they go to some countries against the risk. So the risk can be a war. It can be a revolution. It can be nationalization. It can be exchange rate problems. So you have insurance companies which are specialized in this. For instance, in Europe, we have two of them. The first one is Allianz Trade, coming from Germany, and the second one is Coface, coming from France. So they are selling insurance packets in order to protect you. So the CEOs at that time, they did not care. But what happened is that the CEOs are sometimes sent to prison. They're sent to jail. And we had this example from Carlos Ghosn. Maybe you remember Carlos Ghosn, who used to be the president of Renault, Nissan, and Mitsubishi. And he has been sent to jail. So today, the CEOs, they cannot be protected. So it means that they have to have their own say, and they need to have a presence in politics that they didn't have before. So this is why this topic is very important for them. The second thing that I'm teaching is Islamic business. So for you here in Mexico, it is not an important thing. But there is another country, Brazil. For them, it is a big thing. Because Brazil is the biggest exporter of halal meat in the world. And very often people are not aware about that. But the meat coming from Brazil, which is usually deep frozen meat, is certified halal when it goes to the different countries, and you can find it everywhere. You can find Brazilian halal chicken in Singapore. You can find it in the Middle East. You can find it in Europe. You can find it in so many places. So it is not a very big topic for Mexico, but concerning other Latin American countries, it can be quite a big thing. I have two programs. The first one is the executive MBA that we have in Singapore. So my participants concerning this one are coming from Asia, but it doesn't mean that they are all Asians. They live in Asia. They live in Singapore, and they are coming there. And I see here the ambassador of the Philippines. So we used to have also people from the Philippines. So they were flying in from Manila to Singapore every month in order to attend the program. So we have quite a few of them. And the main person who is working with me on this program in Singapore is also coming from the Philippines. So we export to the Philippines quite often. Now, the second program that we have is the MBA that we have in Bahrain. So Bahrain is a small island. It is in between of Iran on one side and Saudi Arabia on the other side. And here the participants, they come from three countries. They come from Saudi, they come from Kuwait, and they come from Bahrain. So these are the things that I do. And recently, what happened is that in the school, they recognized that there was an important thing to do with the geopolitics. Bonjour. An important thing for geopolitics. And they instituted an Institute for Geopolitics and Business. So we have two co-directors, myself in Singapore, and the other one, my colleague, Aurélien Colson, who is in Paris. So this is what I do. And now for today, we have prepared 250 slides. No, I'm joking. We don't have this. This is only for students when we are teaching to the students. We will look at three things that we have here. The first thing is the business geopolitics and what are the different branches of geopolitics that we have today. The second thing is the consequence of the election of Donald Trump, which is the topic of the day. Yeah? So every day we have some new things happening here. And the third thing is what to do. Because Mexico and Canada are not the only countries which are affected. You also have Europe, which is affected. And we have also to take into account how Europe can respond to the challenge which is given by Donald Trump. But we don't have also to forget about Asia So of course, China is already hit by the tariffs, but the other Asian countries will also feel the heat, especially Vietnam, but also some other countries in Southeast Asia. For instance, Donald Trump, he didn't forget about you. He's just waiting in order to come there. So we also have to prepare for that kind of situation. So the first one, what I wanted to mention is that we have the different branches of geopolitics, and I am specializing in this one, which is business geopolitics. And when we look at them, we can analyze what Donald Trump is doing today. And everything depends. What is the perspective that you are taking? So concerning the first one, which is the classical geopolitics, this used to be the only one. And this was the branch which has initiated geopolitics as such. So the great geopoliticians of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, they belong to this one. Okay. So the most important one, and it is today the dominating one. So we have the others, but this one is a dominating one. So what are the main characteristics of this? For classical geopolitics, they are focusing on facts, and they are focusing on reality, and they are focusing on what we call realism. Realism in world politics, realism in foreign affairs. So this is the classical way how we are looking at geopolitics. So if we are taking the example of Donald Trump, and if we look at this classical approach concerning Donald Trump, it is very easy to analyze because he is putting America first and everything else second. So everything else involves all the other countries and involves all the other, let's say, domains. So it can be economy, it can be military, it can be political influence. Everything is secondary to the first aim, which is America first. So now, if we are looking at realism, realism means that we don't have friends, we don't have enemies, what we have is the interest. So this interest today is this one. But maybe in 2 days, it will be a different one. And maybe in 3 days, we can come back to the first one. So this is realism. And this is something which is disturbing because we are expecting from the United States to be the leader of a certain part of the world and also to be the moral guidance for many other countries in the world. And with the interest put first, we don't have the moral guidance anymore. So I will just remind you the words of the Singaporean Minister of Defense, Mr. Ren, who attended the conference security in Munich very recently. And as you know, Singapore is always balancing between China and the United States. China is the biggest trading partner, as for many Asian countries, but the United States is the main security partner. And never Singapore has criticized China or the United States. But for the first time, the Minister of Defense has criticized the United States and criticized the United States on this element by saying the United States is no more a moral guidance. The United States is now behaving like any other country in the world. So there is no exceptionalism. There is no something which is particular to the United States. So in that case, the United States is operating like any other predator, like any other big country, like any other, let's say, superpower, and there is no difference between them. So this is what he said, and it was quite a shock, not only for the Singaporean audience, but also for the Asian audience, because we are not used to find this kind of criticism concerning the United States. So this is classical approach, where the interest is the most important one, and we'll take one example later on. The second one is the critical geopolitics. Critical geopolitics is about 40 years old. It originated with one book, which is called Critical Geopolitics by Gerald Toll. And as the name indicates, they criticize. So they criticize the classical approach. So for them, it has more to do with philosophy and sociology rather than with military and the economy or politics. So the main point is to say, if classical geopolitics put the emphasis on truths and facts, the critical geopolitics criticizes truths and facts and says truths don't exist and facts don't exist. What exists is the context, which is making truths and which is making the facts. So that's the critical approach. And when I'm talking to my young students, they like the critical approach very much because they identify me with the classical approach. And they are saying, you, the old people, you behave in a certain way, but we young people permit us to criticize you. So this is why the critical geopolitics is very popular among the young people. But it is presenting a big problem. A big problem is that they are lacking pragmatism and we cannot implement it. So they are very good in asking the question, in talking about that, but not providing answers and not providing the good answer. If, for instance, the bombs are falling on you, you cannot discuss about the truths or not. You have to answer to that. So this is the critical approach. And Donald Trump is also present there. Because as you know, when he has been kicked out of WhatsApp and Facebook, he opened his own social network. Do you remember the name of the social network? Truth Social. Truth Social. The term truth is not coming like this. It is coming from the critical point by saying that the others, and maybe you have seen that when he came to power, how he is treating the media houses. He is calling them legacy houses. Legacy houses means with heritage and means with privilege. And he is introducing Truth Social in order to distract all this. Because the term of deconstruction and the term of reconstruction is a central part of critical geopolitics. They put the emphasis on knowledge and they put the emphasis on the discourse. So the narrative and the story is very important in this. He is changing the narrative. For instance, concerning the war in Ukraine, we used to have one narrative, which was victory at any cost. And now it is peace at any cost. This is a shift concerning the narrative. And this is a very important shift, which is permitting him to change completely his point of view on that. The third one is the feminist geopolitics. So the feminist geopolitics, as the name indicates, is putting the emphasis on gender, but not only on that. In fact, all people are interested in feminist geopolitics, not only women. It has nothing to do with the gender approach that we have there. Because in feminist geopolitics, we have one central element, which is individual sovereignty and community sovereignty. The individual sovereignty is freedom to people. And people are not responding to state. And the state does not govern people. So that's the most important element that we have here. And on top of that, we have the communities. So the community can be a national community, it can be a religious community, it can be indigenous community, whatever you want. So the feminist geopolitics is putting the emphasis on the rights of the communities rather than on the rights of the state. So this is why also this is something which is quite important. And Trump and Elon Musk. Elon Musk is presenting himself as a libertarian. And as a libertarian, he is putting the emphasis on individual freedom. And they want not to destroy the state, but they want to decrease the importance of the state and the possibility of the state to put some guardrails on the individual freedom. So this is how we can also have the three elements when we analyze what is happening with Trump. The last one is business geopolitics. When I came last time, it was in November. He has not been elected yet. So we were just before. And Elon Musk has not been elected yet. But now we don't know who is the president. Is it Trump or is it Elon Musk? So this is why the geopolitics and business is very important. In the past, businesses were working with the state. This is not a problem. But usually it was done behind the closed doors. And this is why many people are associating this with corruption, with bribery, and so on. But today, for the first time, we have companies which are ready to take the responsibility to run the state. We didn't have this before. Because before, the companies, they were looking at their own interest. And they're going to see the state, and they negotiate with the state for their own interest, not for the interest of the state. They were saying, we do our job, and you do your job. But now, for the first time, you have companies saying, we want to run the state. And we want to run the state like we run the company. So maybe you have seen that Elon Musk is sending some inquiry to the federal, that is to the civil servants, and asking them, what did you do last week? This is what he used in his own company. And he is transferring this to the civil servants. And the civil servants say they are offended because we are not in a private company. We are here to serve the state. And we cannot put on the paper everything that we did in the last week. But he's saying, no, no, no. You are employees like any other employee. And the state is an organization like any other organization. So if it works for the private company, it should work also for the state. So very interesting how they are presenting this. So in order to finish with the classical approach, so the classical approach is here you have a certain number of authors. So these authors are still living today. Since geopolitics is usually associated with the Western institutions, on this side here you have Western authors, mainly American authors. And maybe you can recognize some of them. There is one person here who is very active, especially concerning Ukraine. It is the Professor Mearsheimer from the University of Chicago. And he is extremely active on the social media, in the press, and criticizing the United States and so on. But since I'm living in Asia, I'm also presenting a certain number of Asian authors. Because, of course, we believe that geopolitics is dominated by the Western approach, but in all other countries, we also have a certain number of authors who are not maybe so prominent in the West. I will just quote this one here, Kishore Mahbubani. So Kishore Mahbubani is an ambassador from Singapore, and he is a veteran concerning the diplomacy. But he was extremely criticizing concerning the United States. And he wrote a certain number of books. And in his books, he is talking about the United States of becoming the superpower number 2. Obviously, the superpower number 1 is China. And of course, in the United States, they didn't like him very much. But he's repeating this like a mantra for the last 20 years. So when he presented this for the first time, no one took him seriously, but today they're taking him seriously. And very recently, he's also commenting what is happening between the United States and China. There's 3 persons here. From the classical geopolitics point of view, they tend to believe that no one else counts. And they also tend to believe that it is possible to share the world according to the spheres of influence that we used to have in the past. For the people who are a little bit older, they remember the Cold War. And during the Cold War, we used to have a sphere of influence of the Americans and the sphere of influence from the Soviets. And all the rest was inexistent. In fact, there was one. It was the non-aligned movement. But the non-aligned movement didn't have a military alliance. The American side had NATO, and the Soviet side had the pact, the Warsaw Pact. So they had a military alliance. But the non-aligned movement, they didn't have a military alliance. So this is why they have been sidelined. So today what is happening, these people will talk to each other. So since they talk to each other, maybe they will come to the conclusion that it is possible to have a deal between the three of them. And if there is a deal between the three of them, they will share the world for the three of them. So this is an event which could be very dangerous because we live in a multipolar world after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and we could never imagine to go back to the spheres of influence. But maybe today, this is something which is happening. So for the moment, these two are talking to each other, but very soon they will talk to this one, because this one and this one, they talk to each other. So there is no reason to believe that there will not be a temptation for them to act this way. So maybe the theory of the spheres of influence is coming back, and in that case, for all other countries, they will have to figure out how they will do with this. One example of realism is this person here, Henry Kissinger. He is the personification of realism because he was pushing Nixon in order to recognize People's Republic of China. And there was a reason for that, because they wanted to bring Russia in order to go against China. So at that time, we are 1971, 1972, PRC has not been recognized by the United States. So it has been in limbo. In fact, Taipei was representing China in the United Nations. So they reversed this and they recognized People's Republic of China. Okay. So what is happening today is the term which is extremely popular, extremely fashionable today. It is called the reverse Nixon. So the reverse Nixon is when the United States want to find a deal with Russia in order to counter China. So it is the opposite of something that we used to have in 1971, 1972. So you will find in the literature, you will find in the newspapers, very often this term, which is reverse Nixon. So we are going back to that time in the 70s when the United States took this radical position against China, against Russia by bringing China with them. So this is something that we can talk about. However, the two guys, they will not permit this to happen. One example how realism is also working in Asia is represented by the situation in Vietnam. Because Vietnam has a big neighbor. It is called China. Here you have another big neighbor. I don't know what is the name, but you will. So we have a big neighbor for Vietnam, which is China. And as you know, China has come with a plan which is called the 9-dash line. And the 9-dash line is encompassing practically the whole South China Sea. So the countries which are affected are Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, and the others. So what is the problem here? The problem is that when we are looking at the map of Vietnam, we have some oil and gas there. Oil and gas is here. This is where is oil and gas. But if you look at this line here, this line is the 9-dash line from China. This is something that they claim for themselves. But according to the UNCLOS, which is the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Seas, Vietnam is claiming rightfully this. And there was also a very famous case between China and the Philippines concerning UNCLOS, in order to see the islands, do they belong to China or do they belong to the Philippines? So we have the same thing here. So what is the realism in that? If Vietnam goes there, here, in that case, China will consider that Vietnam is entering its own waters. So what they are doing is that they are dividing all that. And they are giving concessions. So they are giving concessions mainly to Western companies, but also to some Chinese companies in order to work there. But the main concession, they are keeping it here. So it is here. And this main concession here has been given to the Russians. So they are inviting the Russians in order to explore oil and gas on the Vietnamese shores because they believe if the Russians do this, China will not retaliate. So this is realism. So realism means you want to do something and you don't want to provoke the other side because the other side is extremely powerful. So in order to bring someone with you, you are trying to find a friend. So this friend is Russia. So when President Putin came to Asia, he visited 3 countries. He visited China, he visited North Korea, and he visited Vietnam. And he went to Vietnam because of this, in order to secure that there would be concessions which are given by the Vietnamese side. So all this to say that we have a discussion about the different branches of geopolitics and how do we look at what is happening today. I will finish the first part by asking a rhetoric question. Who defines what is a geopolitical risk today? And you can have many people who are doing this. The people who operate with risk every day is finance and insurance, because they know what is the risk and they are analyzing it, but they don't know what is the geopolitical risk. Okay. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, this could be their job in order to identify what is the geopolitical risk that we have. Or it can be private companies doing so. So I will take one example of this. And this company is called BlackRock. So you probably know BlackRock. BlackRock, they operate with about $10 trillion. $10 trillion. This is higher than many GDPs that we exist in the world for the different countries. $10 trillion. So out of the $10 trillion, they cannot put all the money everywhere they want to go, because it is engaged, it is invested on a long term. But let's say they can invest 10%. 10% is $1 trillion. $1,000 billion. If the Larry Fink, who is the CEO of BlackRock, he comes to any country in the world, they will probably bring the red carpet and they will ask, can you please come to us?
Yeah, he came here twice.
And was there a red carpet? Because we talk about big money. So when you talk about big money, there's people, they have the big money, so they can invest all this big money there. So why do I talk about BlackRock? It is because BlackRock, they have a geopolitical dashboard. So when you visit the website of BlackRock, you can download the geopolitical dashboard. This is how it looks like. And it is the latest one from February 2025. They are publishing it every quarter. So the latest one, it is last month. And what is interesting is they are giving the 10 biggest risks in the world. And it is interesting to see how BlackRock is viewing the world. It doesn't mean that everybody will follow BlackRock, but it is influential. It is so big company that everybody pays attention to that. So let's look at the biggest threats. The first one threat is global trade protectionism. Here. The second one, Middle East regional war. Third one, US-China strategic competition. It said, where is Ukraine here? Here. And it is not called Ukraine. It is called Russia-NATO problem. So the term Ukraine doesn't appear here. So the conclusion is that for BlackRock, the war in Ukraine is a regional war, and it has been contained. It did not spill over to the other places. So since it has been contained, it is not a global problem. While for the Europeans, if you tell them this, they will tell you, you are crazy. But this is how BlackRock is viewing at this. And of course, we can complain, we can say this is not true, etc., but they will not change their mind. So they will say it is a regional war. We don't have to pay attention to this. For instance, what is happening in Israel is here. It is number 2. according to BlackRock, while Ukraine will be somewhere below. So, just in order to say that when we talk about geopolitics today, we have many actors. Of course, the states are the main actors, because the states, they have the coercive power, and very often they have a monopoly of coercive power. They are the only ones having a police and having the army, without talking about failed states where they don't have police and the army. But in the great majority of cases, they have the police and the army, so they can decide about war and peace, because they have the coercive power. But the economy is there. In a capitalist world, the states practically don't produce anything. Everything is produced by private companies, even weapons, even military equipment. So this is where we have a collision between the interest of the state and the interest of the private company. Let's take two examples. The first one is coming from Boeing. Boeing, 50% of its turnover is military, and 50% is civilian. So if you are the CEO of Boeing, which one will you favor? Which one will you privilege when you have to decide about the future of the company? So you would say, you have to privilege the military. And Boeing say, no. Why should I privilege the military? I could privilege the civilian. I have orders for the next 20 years concerning the civilian part. If you want me to produce more aircrafts for the military, I need more production units. Who will pay for the production units? So those are the questions which are coming from a private company. Another one is from Germany. It is Rheinmetall Group. And Rheinmetall Group is manufacturing the tanks, the Leopard tanks. So these Leopard tanks are very much engaged on the Ukrainian front, and they have proven to be very efficient tanks. But Rheinmetall is a private company. So now, when the European Union is talking about boosting its military, and they are ready to put hundreds of billions of dollars on the table, the question is, who will produce this? So Rheinmetall may say, okay, I want to produce, but do you guarantee for the next 20 years? Do you guarantee for the next 50 years the orders that you are asking me today? So all this to say that there must be a dialogue between the state, that is the coercive power on one side, and the private company on the other side, because the private company, it can have its own, let's say, interest and its own priorities. I will just finish in a few minutes, and after that, if you don't mind, we can open for a discussion, because last time it was a very lively discussion, remember? So we will also very good questions asked, because in that case, we can also sense what is the priority for you. We can have a priority for us, but maybe for you, especially for the young people who are here, maybe they have their own priorities in their mind. So in that case, we can look at this. I will finish by looking at not the consequence. Okay, let's put the consequences of Donald Trump's election. We have to make a distinction between period before 2016 and after 2016. Before 2016, we lived in what we call happy globalization. So happy globalization means no tariffs, no obstacles. We are moving from one country to the other. Everything was fine. Yeah, because this was financial crisis. It was not manufacturing crisis. So they were continuing to manufacture in the other places. So they are saying, okay, it was irresistible and it was irreversible. It was impossible to stop and it was impossible to go back. So what happened 2016 and 2019, we had these three things. Donald Trump has been elected in 2016, Brexit same year, and the COVID in 2019. So there's three things. They have killed the globalization that we used to know before 2016. So after the COVID, that is after 2021, because we need the time in order to recover from the COVID. After that time, globalization has nothing to do with the situation that we had before. And the problems that we have here are given there. So I will stop on this slide, and after that we can engage in a conversation. So what did he initiate? He did not initiate immediately, but he initiated in 2018. So we have several things here. The first is deglobalization, and after that we have the rest. Deglobalization means that Donald Trump wanted to kill globalization. And how to kill globalization? There is one guardian of globalization. As we used to have the guardians of the galaxy, we have guardian of the globalization, which is the WTO. So he wanted to kill the WTO, and he practically did it. Because in the WTO, we have the appellation. You know? And what happened? So in the appellation body, the United States made their best in order not to elect the judges in the appellation body. It doesn't work. So what is happening is that because of the tariffs, which have been initiated by the United States, China is complaining to the WTO, but it is wishful thinking. There are no judges, so they cannot go to the appellation body. So this is how he wanted to kill this. But there is a reason why he wanted to kill this. For him, there is an unfair situation in the WTO because you have developed countries and you have developing countries. And the developing countries, they had privileges in terms of quotas, in terms of maintaining the national preference, in terms of having tariffs. So he was saying, this is unfair. How come that we have countries benefiting from this and we cannot have that? So when we look at the website of the, I will just skip this because we don't have time to look at that. Okay, I didn't have on the website of the WTO, they are giving you the list of the countries which are developed and the countries which are developing. Which country is developing? China. And Donald Trump is saying this is totally unfair. How can China be a developing country when China is #1 or #2 in the world? It's impossible. So we have to remove this. In 2000. That was always the same thing, meaning we are bringing them together and we hope that something will change. So did it change? No, it didn't change very much. So we have this, Yeah, you're right. You're right.
From both sides, they are responsible for this huge crisis of multilateral trade.
Because we have the groups. And who is in the group? So China is in the group. Mexico is also in the group. Okay. But do you know that Singapore is in the group of developing countries? Singapore is in the group of developing countries, where the GDP per capita in Singapore is one of the highest in the world. So this is why Donald Trump is saying this is unfair, we have to change all that, etc. I remember that when he introduced the changes. In Singapore, they reacted immediately. And they were saying, we have to see this. Do you think that they pulled out of the group? No. They found a solution. So what is the solution? Singapore was saying, we are in the group of the developing countries because in Singapore, we don't have natural resources. But what is the point? We are talking about the GDP per capita. We don't talk about natural resources. But they are using the natural resources in order to explain why should they be in the group of the developing countries. So deglobalization is the first thing. And after that, you have sanctions, boycotts, and everything. So just in order to be sure about what do we talk about, The sanctions are usually partial sanctions because you have to establish the list. When the United States is sanctioning China or Mexico or whatever, they have to come up with the list of products that are under sanctions. So you have a list of products, so it can be agricultural products, it can be uranium, it can be whatever you want. So all this cannot be sold. So this is something that is on the list. The second thing is companies. But in companies, it can be banks. So the very big banks can be under the sanctions. So this is what happened in Russia. They have sanctioned, for instance, gas and oil, and after that, they sanctioned Gazprom. Because within Gazprom, you also have a bank, which is the Gazprom Bank. And the Gazprom Bank continued to exercise, but not selling gas and oil. So now they are under the sanctions, the complete Gazprom system. And the third thing is individuals. So you have a list of people. So on the top of the list, you have President Putin. So that's quite normal. So you have a list of people, and they're saying we are sanctioning them. Do you think that the United States is sanctioning Mexico? So I was looking at the office for that. This office is here. It is called OFAC, Office of Foreign Assets Control. So this is open information. You can go there and you can visit. Yeah. So they are putting you the list and they're telling you these are the entities which are under sanctions. Okay. So here you have, for instance, Balkans, etc. But I put China. So when you look at the list here, you have 926 Chinese entities which are sanctioned by the United States. What does it mean? Theoretically, Mexico can operate with a Chinese company if it is not on the list. If you are on the list, in that case, the long arm of America can also come here. But if it is not on the list, you can continue to be present there. Now, I was putting Mexico in order to see what is happening. This is Mexico, 913. 913 Mexican entities, and you have all the names. You see here? They are starting here. I don't have the whole list, but you can go there.
But those are companies that are trading with China?
Not necessarily.
Or in
Anything. It can be money laundering, it can be drug cartels, it can be whatever you want. So they're putting them on the list. 913, while China is 920. You are fighting with them. On the, but
we are partners. We used to be partners.
Probably not for the same reasons. But this is what they're doing there. Okay, so this is sanctions, okay? So you can have sanctions on one side, and after that you can have something which is called the boycott. Boycott is different, because very often the boycott is initiated by individuals or by the civil society, not necessarily by the states. And these boycotts are very important for the companies because sometimes they are not sure about what to do. So we had this case, for instance, concerning the war in Ukraine and concerning Israel and Gaza. Because in Ukraine, it was not, for instance, food is not under the sanctions. So any food company can operate there. So this is why Nestle and Mondelez, they are operating in Russia. They have never left Russia. But a company called McDonald's, they left Russia. So now we have to consider, is McDonald's food or not? But let's say that it is food, so in that case, they can continue to operate there. But they faced backlash in the other countries, especially in America. So they decided to pull out, and in the process, they lost more than $1 billion. But they did not decide to pull out of Israel. So this is the same thing, meaning you can have a boycott. I was in Germany last year, and in Germany, there were posters announcing McDonald's offers, okay? And people are coming with the markers, and they are writing on it, and they are saying, boycott Gaza, etc. So it means that people are boycotting. And we had this situation also in Malaysia and Indonesia, because people started to boycott. Indonesia and Malaysia did not sanction McDonald's. But the people, they started not to go to McDonald's. So in that case, we can have also the reaction of the population, which is not official sanctions, but which is under the boycotts. So these are the consequences that we have with the situation that we have with Donald Trump's election. And now the last question is what to do. So what to do? I asked the people from UPS, but also some other people in Singapore, what to do when we have the situation with Donald Trump. And there are three answers, if I remember well. The first answer was wait and see. Wait and see. Don't do anything. Don't escalate. And we'll see what is happening. And there are reasons for that. One main reason is that the next year, there would be midterm elections in the United States in November 2026. The midterm elections means they will renew the whole House of Representatives and 1/3 of the Senate. And the people who are saying wait and see, they're saying wait and see. Maybe he will lose. And if he loses, in that case, he's losing the Congress and he cannot implement everything. So this is one thing. Okay? Second thing is to say, for the moment, Democrats are stunned. They cannot do anything because of the shock and awe policy from Donald Trump. But maybe they will wake up and maybe they will start a resistance. So when they start a resistance, in that case, maybe he will also change his point of view.
The resistance coming from the civil society and the courts.
Yeah. But maybe the Democrats will also wake up. So they are saying, let's see. Maybe they don't have a champion today. Huh? But let's say that they have a champion. In that case, they can start. Let's start.
Said, just wait 6 weeks more and he will start the downfall.
So this is wait and see. The third point concerning wait and see is even among the Republicans, some may revolt. For instance, you have been supporting the war in Ukraine, meaning Ukraine resistance, for so long and so fiercely that now you completely flip-flop. How can you do this? So some of these people will probably not follow him. So this is the wait and see thing that they are saying, and even coming from the business sector. The business sector will say, okay, you can go against everyone in the world for a short period of time. Or you can go for a few of them all the time. But you cannot go against everyone all the time. That's impossible. And this is what he's doing. So maybe he's overstretching his force. Maybe he's overstretching his capability. So he's just starting. And probably the business sectors, even in the United States, will come to see him and will tell him, please don't go too far. Let's do something else. So this is the wait and see, and it can be proactive. So the proactive is to say, we have to make a country like an indispensable nation. So the indispensable nation is a nation or a country that no one wants to destroy, and everyone has interest to maintain like it is. The typical example is Singapore. Singapore, they don't have natural resources, but they have established itself as an indispensable country. So why is this an indispensable country? They are saying we have the hub for everything, the financial hub, the health hub, the infrastructure hub, etc. And we are the place for mediation. When people want to talk, they come to Singapore. And they remember the first term of Donald Trump, when he wanted to see the North Korean Kim Jong-un. Where did they go? They come to Singapore. If you know Singapore, they went to Sentosa in order to have conversations. Which other country was chosen? It was Vietnam. But Korea and the United States, they can choose whatever the country they want, where they can go in order to have a conversation. But they have chosen Singapore in order to do so. So, for Mexico, for Canada, for China, for whatever, you need to establish us an indispensable nation. And it can go in three directions. It can be military or security. It can be political, or it can be economical. You don't need to have the three of them. If you have just one of them, it is enough. So in that case, no one will come after you. So this is how we can respond to this kind of challenge which is coming from the United States today. I would like to stop right now in order to take some questions, because otherwise we can stay for hours.
No, yes.
Please.
There are so many questions here. I don't know if we are going to address every one of them. Here there is one. How does the feminist perspective challenge traditional geopolitical risk assessments?
Very good question. I like this question very much, because I love the feminist approach. As I indicated before, we have a campus in Rabat in Morocco. And I had a delegation from the biggest company in Morocco coming to Singapore. They were all men, and they were all a little bit aged. And I tell them, we will talk about feminism. They look at me, they say, Professor, we are not women. Why should we talk about feminism? And I tell them, please wait and see, and we'll see what happens. So after 2 hours, I explained them what is feminism. They say, Professor, we are all feminists now. So I converted them, so they went back to Morocco in order to talk about this. Now, we can have approach here. The feminist approach in geopolitics is to challenge the classical one. The classical one is putting the emphasis on the sovereignty of the state. Today, we live in the Westphalian regime from the Treaty of Westphalia from the 17th century. So in the 17th century, there was a religious war in Germany, in Europe, and there was a series of treaties. The collection of these treaties were called the Westphalian regime. And the United Nations, in the Charter of the United Nations, they have taken the elements from the Westphalia. So 2 elements here. The first one is non-interference in local affairs of another country. And the second one, intangibility of borders. No one can touch the borders. So there are 2 things here. Non-interference in local affairs and intangibility of borders, meaning the borders can change only if the 2 countries agree on that. If one country doesn't agree, you cannot change the borders. So this is the Westphalian regime. And the feminist approach says we will criticize both elements. So we will criticize the first one. So the first one is non-interference in local affairs. From the feminist approach, there is no local affairs and foreign affairs. This does not exist, because people live and people communicate. So it means that there is not one country and there is not another country. So they put the emphasis, for instance, on migrants. Because for migrants, the question is, do they have a nationality and who will protect them? And the feminist approach is to say the human beings, whoever they are, they have rights. So if they have rights, we don't mind where they are and what is their nationality. And this is where they clash with the classical geopolitics. Because for classical geopolitics, we all have a nationality. We all have a state that we depend on. We all have a state which is controlling us. But from the feminist point of view, they want to destroy this. So this is how the feminist geopolitics, again, like the critical geopolitics, does not give practical elements at the end. What they say is that they criticize what is existing before. And for the borders, well, they all say the same thing. The problem concerning the borders is, first, that the borders are fixed by the winners. And usually the borders are fixed after a war. So the winner is not asking the loser, do you accept the borders? They're just giving them the borders and they're telling them this is the border, and that's all. And the border is a human invention. So since it is a human invention, it can change. So in order to summarize this, the feminist approach is criticizing the classical approach. And they're very good in this, but they don't give the practical elements at the end. So it means I cannot implement a feminist approach to this. So this is why the classical element, even if it is under fire, even if it is criticized, is much more pragmatic and has much more tools in order to implement something. Another question?
Okay. Given the current global landscape, this is from Romero from the Technological University.
Yeah,
okay,
yes.
sorry. Given the current global landscape, which regions present the greatest opportunities and risks for businesses due to the geopolitical instability?
Very good question. I think that we work together because I have some slides about that. So I give the slides here. I would refer to the, this is all the regions, okay? And this is the growth which is planned for this year, for the next year. So as you can see, the region where the growth is the biggest one is in Asia, and especially in Southeast Asia. So this is where you have to go to in order to develop. So when you open this here, this is the ASEAN situation. The ASEAN situation is 10 countries. As you can see, Indonesia, and we have people here from Indonesia, from the Indonesian embassy. How many from the Indonesian embassy do we have? 1, 2, 3? Indonesia is colonizing everyone here. Of course.
Superpower of the 21st century.
Look at this, 284 million people. Huh? Okay, and the next one that we have the ambassador from the Philippines. We have 116 million people there. So look at the total. The total is bigger than the European Union. Okay, European Union is about 500 million, but here we talk about much bigger role. Okay. However, ASEAN is not the European Union. It is not as integrated as the European. Right? And here, what is happening? Exactly. So this is why you have to go there. Africa also. But Africa, concerning the economic situation in Africa, here, as you can see, we can make a difference between Northern Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa. But here, we have plenty of opportunities when you go there. So now when we look at the top growing economies in Asia, I'm putting apart Macau because Macau is small, so it is not relevant, etc. But you will find the others, okay? So you will have India, you have Cambodia, Bangladesh, etc. You have all of them here. This is GDP growth. The GDP growth in Mexico, it is not even here. It is here, right? Okay. But it is the same thing in Europe. So it is, so when you look at this growth that we have here, you are just asking, wow, how can we go there? Because that's the most important element when we go. So I would say that, especially concerning Mexico, now you have the tariffs coming from the United States. So what to do? If there is something to...
this is one of the questions.
Exactly. So what, I'm preempting the question. So what to do? I would say Mexico cannot change geography. No. You will always have a big neighbor. And you always have to be in good terms with the good neighbor. You cannot go to war with the neighbor that you have there. So you have a good neighbor, bad neighbor, but the neighbor is there. So you have to cope with this neighbor. But should you put all your eggs in the same basket? This is where, this is where from finance and from business, we are saying we have to spread the risk. So when you spread the risk, you are also dealing with the other parts of the world. Today, Mexico about 27% of total GDP of Mexico is exports to the United States. So you are completely addicted to the United States. You are completely dependent on the United States for this because of the happy globalization. Everything was easy, you can do this, etc. Today, not more. Yeah. So back in Singapore, it was 2 months ago, at ESSEC, we organized an event with the Mexican embassy. And it was the China +1 strategy. Because China +1 means companies, they must stay in China. Because it is the biggest manufacturing hub, and it is the biggest market. They cannot leave China. But they cannot put all the eggs in the same basket. So they are looking for the +1. And +1 today, especially if you are an American company, you have 2 countries. You have Vietnam or Mexico. So these 2 countries are competing. But maybe in Mexico we are not aware about that because Vietnam is far away, etc. And maybe in Vietnam they are not aware about that. But American companies, this is how they look at it.
We are aware.
Right?
Vietnam is our main competitor in nearshore.
Of course. So now, they are your competitor, but can they be your friend? So this is why when we are looking at the Southeast Asia, it is possible to do so. So Mexico is now part of a group which is called MICTA. You know MICTA? Everybody knows MICTA? You know the companies which are, the countries. So you have Mexico, you have Indonesia. What else do you have? You have Korea and you have Turkey. And the ambassador of Turkey is present here. And you have Australia as well. So you have 5 countries there. So there's 5 countries which are part of the MICTA. They are what we call middle powers, okay? But not small powers, no? They are middle powers. You are not China, but you are not a small power as well. So there's 5 countries. You already have a group. So this group can function and you can develop. So you can choose among the countries which are here, or you can choose among the MICTA countries where you can do it. So the conclusion is you cannot abandon the United States, but it doesn't hurt to work with these countries here. And I presume that in the future, in the next 3 days, I will have conversation at IPADE, and they're bringing 850 MBA students from the whole Mexico. I presume that they will talk about that, because these people are pragmatic. And these people are asking what to do now. So it is, there is one time to complain, there is one time to cry, and there is another time what to do. So they are in the other time now.
Another one, probably 2 more, but yes. Okay. Do you think that the European Union and their member states have the military, economic, and political power to help Ukraine in its confrontation with Russia?
So this is also the question of the day on the other side of the Atlantic. And they discuss about this, not only in London, but also before. If we put together everything that European Union has, they have the capability. They have the capability. The problem is that they did not work in an integrative way outside of NATO, because they used to work within NATO in an integrative way. And now when you tell them there is no NATO, or you should build something else, they will need time. The NATO exists since 70 years. 70 years it exists. So now if you want to build something, maybe you will also need 70 years in order to build it. So it is very difficult to do it, but on the paper they have the capability, because they have 500 million people, they have a GDP, they have they also have military industries. But again, they're dissociated. And they also have nuclear power. So United Kingdom is not part of the European Union, but it also has a nuclear power. France is the only one. within the European Union to have nuclear power. So they have the nuclear power. Sorry? Sorry? Yeah, France. This is what I said. It is the only one that has the nuclear power. So there is a problem concerning deterrence and concerning the possibility to share the nuclear power. But on the paper, they have this. And it is tomorrow, the aircraft Charles de Gaulle is coming to Singapore. And we were supposed to go there with my students on the aircraft Charles de Gaulle. And the aircraft is coming as a group, strike group. So we have the frigates, we have everything coming there, etc. So this is the aircraft carrier, which is also showing the force that we have in Europe in order to tell all other countries, especially in Asia, what is the capability of Europe. So in short, we have the capability, but we are not integrated from the military point of view.
Well, the last one, sorry, there are some questions, but the last one, probably you already answered this when mentioning Southeast Asia. It says, from a realism point of view, will it be possible for Mexico to use China as a counterpart to the United States?
So this is a big question that we have there, because we have to look at all the consequences of that. How will the United States react to it? What is the situation in the United States concerning that? So on the paper, it is possible, because China has the possibility to project its force even to Mexico. You remember they opened, it was in Bolivia, no, not in Bolivia, in Peru, when they opened the port. The huge port, they opened the port there. So it is possible for Chinese companies to come here. But the reason why the Chinese companies will come here, it is because they hope to export to the United States. They are not coming here because of the Mexican market, even if the Mexican market can be an important one. But they are coming because they hope that they are going there. So if you close this possibility, I don't see the reason why the Chinese company will massively come to Mexico. So, because again, we have to see that private companies have private interest in mind, and they are looking for the increase of the turnover, and the only possibility, apart from the internal market in Mexico, is the United States, and they cannot do this.
I have another one, but this is my question. Sorry, yeah, sorry. You mentioned, when you mentioned the crisis of globalization, you mentioned that there were three shocks. The election of Trump in 2016, Brexit 2016, and a pandemic of it. But what happened with the globalization in itself? Because the globalization process had in itself the roots of its own crisis. Putting the citizens or putting the market as a first priority instead of the citizens and the people, I think that was one of the main mistakes that those who support globalization made. And I remember, for example, Martin Wolf from Financial Times making a reflection that says, we were wrong when we put in the people to the service of the markets and the free trade instead of the free trade and the markets to the service of the citizens and the society.
Very good. It is because when we compare to the European Union, the globalization is the free circulation of capital, of goods, and people. This is the three things that we have. So, no, but products and services together. So there are three things that we have there. And the problem that we have is that the people who mostly profited from this was the companies, okay? Not the people themselves. However, the people profited from this because of the inflation rate which was going down, because they had the possibility to buy things which are cheaper than they used to buy. So they were happy with that. So now I'm asking the young people here, do you know Shein? Do you know Shein, Ambassador? This what? Huh? What is this?
Selling very cheap.
Did you ever buy from Shein?
No.
Huh?
But I know that many young people buy.
So ask them. Do we have people in the room who bought from Shein? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we have some of them. Okay, so Shein is a perfect example, even after the COVID, because they are selling all these things which are cheap. Okay, so the people who you were buying, good quality or not? Is it good quality or not? Why did you buy? Because it's cheap. Okay, fine. Can you return it? Yes, you can return it. You are coming here, you return it, you're taking, you're buying, etc. So this is how it works, the Shein. So it is coming from China. But do you know where is the headquarters? It is in Singapore. Yeah. On the paper, it is a Singaporean company, like TikTok. The headquarters is in Singapore. So they are Singapore washing all these companies coming from China. Yes. Maybe you saw the Congress hearing of TikTok. Did you watch this? It was very interesting to look. When they keep on asking the guy from Singapore, are you a member of the Chinese Communist Party? And the guy is saying, Congressman, you remember? I remember. And he's saying all the time. Exactly. The hearing, it was a very interesting thing to see. So all this to say that globalization profited also to people because they had the possibility to buy things at a cheaper price. Now, with the tariffs from the United States, Canada retaliated. Mexico will retaliate on Sunday. Is it on Sunday? Okay. So Mexico will retaliate on Sunday. We expect that prices will go up in the United States because the company which is buying, let's say that you're putting 25%, so you are translating it to the final price to the consumer. So automatically the prices will go up. So this is an example where globalization was profit. It was not like Martin Wolf, he is right. Because the biggest profits, they were going to companies. But people, they also profited from that. Now, they will face more tariffs and they will face higher tariffs on this. Should stop? Okay. In order to finish with this, geopolitics is a very fascinating topic. Every day we can talk. Every day we have new things. And you don't need to agree. So geopolitics is also an exchange. It is also a dialogue that we have. So what I have with my students is that if everyone agrees in the room, there is something wrong. That's impossible. Geopolitics means that we have different ideas and we have different interpretations of things happening in the world. So please cultivate a little bit the dialogue and also the possibility to criticize what the people are telling you. Thank you very much. Thank you.